Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unique Moments, where we take a moment to breathe, take a moment to pause, reconnecting mind, body, and spirit. And this episode, I'm going to be talking about shadow work. What is shadow work? What's the benefits of doing shadow work? Why would you need to do it? And how that can help mend the mind, body, and spirit and promote spiritual growth, promote healing. But before we get into the episode, I am going to pull a card. I got a new affirmation deck. So we're going to pull the card. How are we going to do this? These are kind of long. That's why I like them, because it's like a mini poem. So it says, retreat and restore. So often we underestimate the power of rest. When our hearts feel heavy and our minds cannot quiet, it is often a sign that we are doing too much, pushing too hard, thinking too far. The concept of more is not always better for our souls. Sometimes the real power, the real abundance is in the power of less. I feel this so much, especially lately. I've just been reflecting, resting. We're getting to the end of the year. It's kind of, I feel like there's two moods. The end of the year, people either rest, you're like, I'm not doing anything. I've given 2025 all I can give it and it's done. Or you're locked in, you're pushing, you're doing everything that you can do, trying to get the most out of the year. And I feel like I'm kind of in the in between of those things. I don't think the year is over yet. Yes, we have what, 2, 3 weeks left? Maybe two. The year is almost over, but there's still time. And I think now is a good time to kind of not push yourself to your limits and not overdo it and burn out and that whole thing. But I think it is a good time to just not kind of give up and get lazy, because this was a heck of a year. This was a heck of a year, man. And it's very tempting to just be like, I'm done. I'm done. And whatever happens for the rest of the year is whatever happens. But I think the power of slowing down, the power of resting, the power of restoring and coming back to yourself is powerful anytime. But I think especially now, it's just good. It's just good to regroup. It's good to go back. And we do underestimate the power of rest. We live in this society where everything is go, go, go. And it's like you have to earn rest, or you have to, like, I never subscribed to that notion. And I know I'm too I feel like I'm too young to think that way, but even growing up, like, the idea of work to me, I have a love-hate relationship with the idea of work. But I think meaningful work is something different, something that you are dedicated to, devoted to, a purpose that I feel resonance with. But working for somebody else, working to make a check, working to make a living, obviously very necessary, obviously cannot escape it in the world that we live in. Hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it so much. Even if I've had jobs that I love, that I genuinely enjoy going to every day, but I just hate working. Like, I just don't like it. I don't like it. And it's not that I want to sit around and be lazy and not do anything with my day, but there's so many other things to do. There's so many things to do. Like, the off days, they're just not often enough. The off days are not often enough. And so I love rest, big rester. And not only sleep, sleep is very important, but just resting where you're not doing anything necessarily. Like, sleeping is one thing. We do need to get our sleep, but I think rest. And when I think rest, I think, is my nervous system at rest? Because you can be not really doing anything, like not working or not doing anything active, but your mind is still active. Like, your mind is still going and thinking about your to-do list, or thinking about what you got to do tomorrow, or thinking about what you did yesterday, or just anything, anxiety, worry, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, thinking, always thinking. So you're not at rest. And even if, say, your mind is at rest, but your body's constantly going. You're always on the move. You're always on the go. You're always out here. You're always at work. You're always running errands. Like the mind and the body need to rest. And I think when the mind and the body can rest, then the spirit can rest. But also, that's a different thing in itself. I think just because your mind is at rest and your body is at rest doesn't mean you have peace. I think your spirit is at rest when you have peace. And that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing. But I do think, especially during this time, we need to afford ourselves. We need to gift ourselves. If you celebrate Christmas, gift yourselves with the gift of rest. And not just one day, take a few days. And even if you can't take a few days, maybe you do have a busy life, but just take a few minutes for a few days. You know, that's why I love meditation so much, because it's like just a time where you can carve out to rest. I don't have to be doing anything. I'm purposely, intentionally carving out this time for me to do nothing. And the benefits are extraordinary. Okay, the sun is so bright. Okay, so to get into this shadow work, first of all, what is the shadow? The shadow is what it sounds like. You have the light, and then you have the shadow, your shadow self. Think the like parts of you that are unacceptable, that you deemed unacceptable or unworthy or not accepted by society or dysfunctional, like the hidden parts of yourself that you don't show anyone, or maybe the parts of yourself that come out in only certain circumstances: when you're drunk, when you're angry, when you've been pushing your limit, when you're tired. These different parts of you that are still you, but it's like they're hiding in the background. And so they're not necessarily in the forefront. They're not your personality traits that you think of when someone says describe you. But if your family said describe you, or if your ex said describe you, I'm sure they have some negative memories and negative moments. And more than likely, that was your shadow self presenting itself. So the term the shadow, it comes from psychoanalyst, psychiatrist Carl Jung, who he studied with Sigmund Freud, and then he kind of became the founder of analytical psychology, which has to do with the realm of dreams, of the unconscious, of the shadow, of symbolism, of archetypes, kind of that realm. But one of the things he is known for is the shadow. So one of the things that Carl Jung believed is that in order to sort of master yourself, like he believed in this idea called individuation, which is essentially realizing yourself in its entirety. And he believed that you can't realize your whole self unless you meet your shadow. And not only meet your shadow, because it's one thing to meet your shadow and see the shadow parts of yourself, but the key is integration. It's only when you integrate the shadow parts of yourself that you become truly, truly whole, is what he believed. And so, again, the shadow, it's like it's like the ugly parts of you. And we all have a shadow. Even if you've done the most self work on yourself, even if you've been in therapy, currently in therapy, and you've ironed out all your things, you've healed, you still have a shadow. It's not something that goes away. You just become more conscious and more aware of it. And again, aware of how to integrate it so that it's kind of like you're not two people anymore. It's not like, oh, this is the part of me that comes out when I drink tequila, or this is the part of me that comes out when I drink vodka. Like, look, that's your shadow self, 100%, 100%, 100%. If you ever done anything while you were drunk that you either regret or that's not like you, that's your shadow self. And the thing about the shadow is, so the more you repress it and the more you like kind of ignore it, the bigger it is. So some people have really, really, really large shadows, but are buried really, really, really deep within themselves. So they probably will never meet their shadow unless they are in a circumstance or scenario where that will come out. And then there are people who maybe your shadow's not as big or not as deep because you've done a lot of work in yourself and you've gone to those places in your mind, or you've gone to those places in your memory or in your wounding, in your trauma, and you've kind of reconciled that and put the pieces together, so to speak. Maybe not healed it completely, but you looked at it. And so people who do that type of work, your shadow is often smaller and it probably doesn't come out to play as often, but it still comes out. It still comes out. And the key is knowing when. But I'm talking about this because I think this is a crucial, crucial point when you are coming back to yourself and when you are on a healing journey, because we can talk about love and light and peace and positivity all day long, but that's just not the reality, because something had to happen to you, or an experience, a memory, a wounding, a trauma, something had to happen to where now you have something in you that needs to be healed, or now you have something in you that needs to be mended. Not that you were broken or nothing was ever broken, but it's like fragments. Something is shattered and we need to bring it back. So something happened. And a lot of the times, if you don't look at that thing, or maybe it's not one thing, maybe it's a little things, trauma and wounding doesn't have to be like this big thing. Not to discount anyone who's experienced like a serious trauma, but there are levels. There are levels. Like abandonment can be a form of trauma. Like I have an abandonment wound, and it's not like I was in foster care or like never knew my parents. Like I still know them and they're still around, but I still have a wound. So it's like it can be small and it can be big, but it affects us all the same way. So the shadow, it isn't good or bad. I think it's kind of mistaken for seeing like the bad parts of you, or like the ugly parts of you, the parts of you that are unacceptable that you can't um necessarily show. And it's not good or bad. It's just like this is a part of you. And people's shadows are different. Like a shadow trait might be universal, like for example, anger or jealousy or possessiveness or manipulation, something like that. If you notice that you're the type of person who tends to get really jealous or get really angry, has a bad temper, yells, throws things, can't control, like anger is a big one. But again, that doesn't mean it's good or bad, but there's something okay, so the shadow is like it goes into the shadow because it's something that you weren't allowed to express. So what you're not allowed to express, we often repress. And unless we dig it up in therapy, with journaling, or with a practice that we have, with a mindfulness practice, or just something that we um, do to uncover the hidden secrets of our psyche, if you're not doing that, then it stays repressed, because your brain is trying to protect you. So if you um, cried one day and you got a spanking, or you cried one day and someone told you that like your feelings don't matter, very like over exaggeration, or they told you that you can't cry, like crying is not allowed, it's unacceptable, then you learned subconsciously and consciously, you learn that okay, I can't express my emotions, I can't cry, I can't feel, and so that becomes repressed. And so your shadow self just wants to cry, and and there's a time and a place, but now that you've repressed that, that becomes a part of your shadow. So maybe you walk around in your regular everyday life, your personality that you show to the world, not the part that you repress, not the shadow, the self, the ego, the person that you are every day when you interact with people. And you may be labeled as someone who doesn't really show emotion, or who's very stoic, or um, isn't really, just isn't emotional, isn't overly emotional. And there's many reasons why that could be. It doesn't have to be like only your shadow is the cause of this. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there is a correlation if that is something that is in your shadow self. Um, Jealousy is another one. So maybe you grew up with a bunch of different siblings. Maybe you had to fight for attention, or you felt like you weren't paid attention to. Maybe you were the middle child, and or maybe you were jealous of people getting other people's attention. Maybe in relationships, you get jealous of other people giving your significant other attention. And I'm not talking about inappropriate attention. I'm just talking about like conversations. Like you don't want them talking to anybody. You don't want them hanging out with anybody. Like that's like an irrational jealousy. And that's kind of a shadow part of yourself that comes online whenever it's triggered. And so obviously that wouldn't be and obviously that behavior wouldn't be acceptable. So even though you are jealous and you're seething and you really hate that your partner is talking to their coworker like that, or that they're looking at, like, you're not going to say anything because you want to be polite, you want to be presentable, you want to be personable, and you're not going to let that jealous part of you show. But then it goes back into the shadow and it feeds and it gets bigger because it doesn't go away. Again, energetically, um, energy can't be created or destroyed. So that jealous energy is still there. So it either gets expressed and it dissipates, or you it gets repressed and it feeds the shadow and it grows bigger. So it's important to notice what your specific shadow traits are, and that's where we get shadow work from. So shadow work is essentially doing some soul searching, doing some searching and figuring out, okay, what parts of myself do I hide? What parts of myself do I think that people won't accept? Even, and this can be meeting new friends. Like, obviously, if it's like work situations, like you're not going to show your full self because it's a professional environment, duh. But think like personal relationships where you don't necessarily have to hide things, but you still do, um, to be accepted. Like, I don't do this. I do this because this is in my nature and this is in my personality, but I don't do this around my friends because I know they won't accept me or I think they won't accept me. That's a lot of the things. Sometimes it's not even that they won't accept you, it's just the thought that they won't. And so I think the work part of it is really just identifying what the traits are that are not acceptable, and that looks like going into past wounding, maybe past trauma, past experiences that you've had. Think experiences or things that you've gone through that didn't feel like you. Like, trying to see if I have an example. Again, I just come back to drinking because it's like when you're drunk or even a little tipsy, but usually when you're like actual drunk, not blackout. But if you're blackout drunk and you don't actually fall asleep and you're still acting like you're still, you know, being a person, but you have no memory of that, something, a situation like that, like what's happening in that scenario, that would be something to pay attention to because a lot of the times, if you're drunk, a lot of your faculties are down, a lot of your inhibitions are down. And so a lot of subconscious or unconscious behaviors come online when you're drunk. And I don't know the science behind certain alcohols making people feel certain things. Like some alcohols make people horny, some alcohols make people want to fight, some alcohols make people sleepy. I don't know the science behind that, but I'm saying that's just the key to open the door. Like once you get past that, it's like, okay, what was that action and what was that behavior? Okay, whenever I drink this type of alcohol, it makes me want to fight. Why am I so angry? What do I want to fight about? Maybe they did something to you, maybe they stepped on your shoe, whatever. But it's like if you want to fight a stranger when you're drunk and that's normally not your personality and you're normally kind of very chill and relaxed and you can, go about your day and be respectful, then it's like, where is that anger coming from? That's the shadow aspect, and that's the work. Going back through situations and scenarios of where you just weren't yourself or where you were acting out and seeing, okay, where did that stem from? Where did that come from? Where have I felt this before? Where did this first originate from? Can I think of a memory in a time where I first felt this way? And what was that like? And so, some other ways to do the shadow work, you can do it on your own. But I think therapy is a good way if you're doing it right and if you have a nice therapist. And if you know where you want to go, because the therapist can only take you so far as you let them, because they don't know what happened to you. They don't know your experiences. They don't know what you're going through unless you tell them. So you can work this through with a therapist, but it's like you have to go beyond the surface level of just talking about it and uncovering the meanings and why that's happening and where that's stemming from. And I think if you have a good therapist, you can do that. Like just getting to the bottom of like, why do I act like that? Like, is it self sabotage? Is it I have a fear of success? Do I have a fear of failure? Like asking those type of questions is kind of like getting to the root of it. So you can do it in therapy. You can have a journaling practice. This is what I do. But I think again, it's only going to work if you're willing to meet yourself that deeply. If you just journal about an event and you're not really willing to go there and the emotions that came up for you and how that made you feel, then it's almost useless because I think people can journal for years and it just not really transform you. Journaling has seriously transformed my life because I get down to it because it's just me in the journal. It's just me in the paper. Like There's no room. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to put on. Like your shadow can really come out. Like today at work, I wanted to slap my coworker because she did this, and no one's gonna come for you. No one's gonna, But again, going beyond the act of the thing. Okay, you wanted to slap your coworker. Why? Oh, because she did this thing that really upset me. Okay, why? Why did that upset you? What did that trigger in you? And triggers are a big, 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 big key if you want to find out what shadow aspects you have. But that's hard. It's a big thing, but it's hard because I know for me, when I'm triggered, I don't always put two and two together what's happening until after the fact. And then after the fact, it's like I forget it and I'm not gonna want to unpack it. So if you are triggered by something and you can unpack it in real time, like for example with relationships, I know for me, being in relationship with people, even friends sometimes, but more like romantic partners, when you get triggered, it's easy to kind of stuff it down. And again, feeding the shadow, it's easy to stuff it down and like, I'm not going to acknowledge it. I want to keep the peace. I don't want to start an argument, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. But you're doing yourself a disservice and ultimately the relationship a disservice. So if you are triggered by something that your partner does or something that happens, or maybe just a pattern that you're noticing in the relationship, can you bring it up and unpack that right then and there? And that's difficult because the other person has to be willing to dive into that with you and willing to talk about it. But if they are, then that's a blessing because then you can get to the bottom of, oh, like I wasn't mad that you didn't do the dishes. I was mad because I felt like when you didn't do the dishes and I always have to do them, that you're telling me that your time is more valuable than my time and I should just something along those lines, whatever your issues are. Versus like, oh, you never take out the trash. Oh, you never do the dishes. You never buy me flowers. You never do the things. Those are just the surface level things. Something's deeper of why that really bothers you. And that's the work of the shadow. That's the work that we need to be getting into. And it's really just exploring your traits. Some examples of shadow traits are jealousy, laziness, pride, neediness, anger, manipulation, control. If you always have to be in control of something. I was watching a show. What's it called on Paramount with Orna, couples therapy. One of the couples she was working with, I forget what season it was, but she had this thing where she always had to be in control and she was always telling her husband what to do. And on the surface, it just looked like you have to have things your way and I have to do it your way and I just have to listen to you and blah, blah, blah. But after the work of the therapist, she realized that there was a scenario and a situation in her life where she lost control, like she didn't have control. And so unconsciously or subconsciously, because she didn't even know why she always had to have things a certain way or always had to be telling her husband what to do. And so they unpacked that and they came to the conclusion that there was a specific time in her life where something happened. There was an event where she didn't have control over her body, over her circumstances, and her life was just very chaotic. And so her brain put two and two together that okay, to avoid that situation from ever happening again, we always have to be in control. And now she's this person who has control issues. And so it works like that. You have to unpack whatever it is for you and what you notice coming out and what you struggle with, or maybe even people, what people tell you that you struggle with. If you have good friends, if you have good people around you that know you well enough to know kind of where you're, I don't even want to call it a shortcoming because your shadow is not a shortcoming. It's just a part of you that has less desirable traits that need to be acknowledged and worked on. And that's not to say once you acknowledge all of your triggers and your shadow traits that it's just going to go away and you're never going to have spouts of anger or rage or jealousy. No, that's not the case. But the goal is to obviously have them left less often and to notice them hopefully before they come up and before you actually get triggered and to deal with them in a way that's more healthy and beneficial versus either stuffing it down and ignoring it or blowing up and then the cycle continues. Some other shadow traits, avoidance, self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is tricky because I think it's a well-known thing now, but when you're in the act of self-sabotage, it's really hard to know. It's really hard to know that you're actively sabotaging yourself unless someone points it out or unless you're just really, really locked in with yourself to know, oh, okay, I'm the one ruining this opportunity. So that's is like can be hidden because we self-sabotage for a lot of reasons. I think I did an episode on self-sabotage. Yeah, I think I did. um, but that's one of the traits because say you're just going around self-sabotaging relationships, opportunities, and experiences, like you're not letting yourself experience these things, and you have all these reasons of why you're not, but unless you really dug deep, you wouldn't know that it's like a shadow trait. Also, fear of intimacy or abandonment. And again, I talked about abandonment. I think that's one of my actually, I know that's one of my shadow traits that I need to work on, and am working on it. We are working on it. Abandonment is tricky because we come in this world alone and we leave this world alone, and we can't take anything with us, so we really don't have anything to attach to. But, we have friends, we have family, we have jobs, we have passions, we have hobbies, we have things that we attach ourselves to because they make us feel good, because they resonate with us, they're beneficial for us. And so it's like when those things leave, if you have an abandonment wound, it's like 10x. Like, I've blown so many things out of proportion that to me felt like a huge deal. And in retrospect, it was at the time because I'm operating on like my shadow's activated. Anytime there's any sense of abandonment, like that shadow part of myself is activated. And it can be the smallest thing. Like on a large scale, like if I lose a friend, like okay, that's like ouch. That's a big um hit to that shadow aspect of myself. But even if it's something small, like someone didn't text me back, like logically, I know we're busy, we're adults, we all have things to do. You might not text me back for a day, you might not text me back for 2 days. And like, that's okay. And I know that's not a personal attack on me or how you feel about me, but in my former years, it would cut so deep on the same level of someone leaving my life. And it's like, it's just a text message. Like you just didn't reply and you were busy or something like that, something little. But when you haven't done as much shadow work on yourself, those shadow aspects, it's like, think of it like a baby. It's like a big, sensitive, emotional baby. And it's like, you hurt me. And but when I have done the work and I'm more confident in just attachment and like all these things and the fact that we can't really hold on to people and let them, if they want to leave, they want to leave. If they don't want to text me back, they don't want to text me back. Like that's the mindset that I operate in now. But before it was very much like just felt so personal. And it can feel like that when you're operating with your shadow because it's like it's just the wounded parts of you. It's like, yeah. So why is this important? I said this in the beginning, but yes, for wholeness and for healing, but to really know yourself, because to know yourself and to know other people. I'm not saying we all need to go around discussing the shadow aspects of ourselves. I think that's for you and you, or you and your therapist, you and your journal, whoever, to figure that out and integrate those parts so that it's not so triggered, so that it's not so upset or abandoned or alone or angry. Like that's an individual work, but I think it serves other people because you can only meet people as deeply as you have met yourself. And so if I do my shadow work and I realize, oh, I am quite lazy sometimes. Like I just don't like doing things, or I can get very jealous, or I do have a fear of intimacy. I do shy away from intimacy, things like that. When you're just recognizing and learning things about yourself like that, then you are able to give others more grace because it's like if I know I struggle with that, you may have something else in your shadow that you're dealing with subconsciously or unconsciously. You may not even know. And so I think when we do our own work, it allows us to meet people in a deeper way, in a more solid way, because we're all human at the end of the day. We all are made up of the same stuff, more or less. And Is like, okay, I get you. Like if I get me and I understand where I'm coming from, I can understand why you do that. Now is nuance because I'm not talking about making excuses for everybody's bad behavior or making excuses and letting people slide or letting people just, do whatever. But I am talking about giving people grace. And I think you just have to use your discernment because I hate when people say people be knowing what they're doing or people know what they be doing. Like, I truly don't think so. Like, I think you would have to be, I think some people, if you're evil, if you're just an evil person and you're like a manipulator and you like seeing people suffer or you just like ruining people's day, like yeah, maybe you know exactly what you're doing when you're causing chaos and when you're treating mistreating people. But I think majority of the time the things that people get upset for and they think that people know what they're doing, I don't agree. I highly disagree. Because a lot of the time it's unconscious and subconscious behavior that people are acting out. And I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from experience. And I think I know that I've done things to people and I've hurt people. And I know to them in their mind, they thought I did that on purpose, or they thought I knew what I was doing when I did that, or when I said that, or whatever. And it's like, if only you knew. If only you knew. If only you knew that I really didn't. And that's where it gets kind of tricky. And again, that's why I think you need to give people grace because it's like, if you truly didn't know, how am I going to fault you for that? How am I like, yes, maybe you did hurt me. Maybe you did cut me deep and it hurt, but if you're just going through your human experience and you're experiencing something and you're taking it out on me and you're lashing out on me, and then again, I'm not talking about serious situations like abuse or things like that, but I will say controversially, okay, this is just my opinion. I'll say that. I will say I think people who do engage in very extreme acts like that, not gonna say they don't know what they're doing. I know, maybe trigger warning. I know people can understand if I hit someone, it's wrong. If I take advantage of someone, it's wrong. If I manipulate someone, it's wrong. If I steal, it's wrong. Like I think people are equipped enough with a moral compass to know this is not a good behavior. Even when people who abuse and they say I'm sorry and then they do it again, it's like on some level that is a shadow aspect of themselves playing out. And while it's not okay and while it's not acceptable, I truly think if they did the work, if they did the work and they met themselves and you got to the root of the thing, the circumstance and the outcome would be different. That's just my personal opinion. But again, not to let those people slide, but I just don't think that people always know what they're doing in situations because it depends on the extent that they have done the work to them, that they have done the work on themselves. I think it's just good to do the shadow work to clear your mind at the end of the day. I'm only 29 years old and I know I've amassed a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, a lot of memories, a lot of experiences, a lot of people, a lot of trauma, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of stuff. And so imagine getting older, like 30, 35, 40, and just never taking a look and reflecting and revisiting. Like it's only a matter of time before it blows up or before I feel like that's where you get midlife crisis from. And again, that's just my opinion, but I think, cuz if you're constantly checking in with yourself, 3-year mark, 4-year mark, 5-year mark, 10-year mark. Okay. If you're constantly checking in with who you are and who you're becoming and the actions that you're taking and the people and the company that you're keeping and the mindsets and the thoughts that you have, then why are you having a crisis at 45? Why are you having a crisis at, you know, that's just my opinion. But I think it's good to take stock. And I think when we do the shadow work and when we meet ourselves and when we uncover, okay, what's hidden? What don't I want people to see? what am I kind of suppressing that I think is a bad part of myself or that I think might not be accepted, and integrate that. And integration looks different. I won't get into that this episode, but I think the key is integration because you can talk about all your bad traits all day long or your negative traits all day long, but it's like if you don't do anything with it, then they're just going to kind of sit there. And so the whole of it is do the shadow work, uncover the shadow traits so you can see who you are as a whole person. Because and I think that eliminates the blame of, oh, I blame the alcohol. I wasn't myself that day. I was just tired. No, that was still you. That was still you who did that thing, and take accountability and take ownership. And you can acknowledge that maybe you weren't conscious or maybe you weren't aware, but it was still you doing that thing. And so you do have to take accountability for it. And I think we can only begin to take accountability when we truly, truly, truly look at what's inside of us. Like, yeah, we have the light, um, we have gifts, and we have all these positive things, but we have darkness, duality. Negative has to exist because we have a positive. So we all have those shadow traits and we all have a little bit of darkness inside of us, but it's about bringing the darkness into the light and mixing the two and say, okay, hey, I know I can lose my temper when I get like this. I know I can get angry, but it's like, okay, let's bridge the gap. Let's bridge the gap. So that is what I had to say about shadow work. This has really served me just in my life in general, and realizing why I have done the things that I've done in the past and why I think the way that I do. And I think this is really the mind piece when we're talking about the mind, body, and spirit, because I don't think the shadow lives in your mind, but I do think where it stems from, where it's birthed from, like the incidences, the experiences that you had. Like a lot of the times, it's like it lives in your memories and it lives in your DNA and it lives in your bones and it lives in your body. Quite literally, trauma is stored in the body, and so I think you have to look at it, and beyond looking at it, you have to integrate it, or else you're always gonna think of it as like this separate self, this separate part of you, when it's like it's all good. It's all here. And I think that's one step closer toward wholeness. So that's what I had to say about shadow work. And until next time.